Happy New Year, Bookie. How are you? To start, I'm feeling great. I'm excited for all the book reviews this year has in store, and I'm ready to fill this room with books. Also, this year, I pray you and I have a prosperous, safe, healthy, and happy 2026. Now, what do you think of my new setup? I thought it would be cool to change things up and make the video feel more editorial. So I hope you like this new setup. If you do, please let me know in the comments. I would love a stamp of approval from my fellow bookie. So recently, I read the book, The 100 Years' War on Palestine, A History of Settler Colonialism and Resistance from 1917 to 2017 by Rashid Khalidi. After reading this book, I can honestly say this book changed my perspective on the Palestinian and Israeli war. Now, before I explain why, I want to give a breakdown of today's episode. In a few moments, I'm going to start with a brief synopsis of the book. Then we're going to dive into the book's themes and writing style and how these two things influenced how I felt during and after reading. At the end of today's episode, I'm going to let you know if I loved or hated the book and whether I recommend you read it. Okay, let's get into this book review. So the nonfiction book, The 100 Years' War on Palestine, written by Rashid Khalidi, is a historical recount of the Israeli and Palestinian war. Through a series of 6 chapters, Dr. Khalidi provides detailed historical information on the 6 wars fought between Israel and Palestine from 1917 to 2017. Each chapter provides detailed recounts of the 6 wars fought between Israel and Palestine, so the reader has a full understanding of the reason behind each war's commencement and the colonial forces behind its longevity. That's it. That's my synopsis. So for those that have not read this book, this synopsis is enough to give you an idea about the book and not spoil it for you. For those who have read the book, I think we can both agree that this synopsis vaguely summarizes the book. Now, let's get into the fun stuff, themes. While reading the book and reflecting on it, I realized that one of the many themes of this book is settler colonialism. For those of you who may not know what settler colonialism is, I'm more than happy to give you the definition of this term. According to Oxford Bibliographies, settler colonialism is an ongoing system of power that perpetrates the genocide and repression of indigenous peoples and cultures. Essentially hegemonic in scope, settler colonialism normalizes the continuous settler occupation, exploiting lands and resources to which indigenous peoples have genealogical relationships. Settler colonialism includes interlocking forms of oppression, including racism, white supremacy, heteropatriarchy, and capitalism. This is because settler colonizers are Eurocentric and assume that European values with respect to ethnic and therefore moral superiority are inevitable and natural. However, these intersecting dimensions of settler colonialism coalesce around the dispossession of indigenous peoples, lands, resources, and cultures. So, as we progress into exploring this theme, I want you to remember the definition I provided you some seconds ago. Now, why do I believe settler colonialism is the fundamental theme of the book? Well, let's head over to the introduction of the book. In the introduction of the book, Dr. Khalidi states that the 1917 Balfour Declaration issued by British cabinet and committing Britain to the creation of a national Jewish homeland never mentioned the Palestinians, the great majority of the country's population at the time, even as it set the course for Palestine for the subsequent century. This can be found on page 11. Now, you're probably asking yourself, why is the 1917 Balfour Declaration by the British cabinet enough to solidify Israel's settler colonialism? The 1917 Balfour Declaration is enough to solidify Israel's settler colonialism because by recognizing a Jewish state without mentioning the Palestinians who have settled into the region for centuries prior is a subtle way of endorsing the eventual erasure of the Palestinian community as a result of Israel's economic, social, and political domination over the region. In addition to this, the book illustrates how the United Settler States of America overextended their country's military, political, and financial resources to guarantee Israel's autonomy and domination. For the sake of not spoiling the book, I won't get into too much detail of Britain and the US's role in propping up Israel's settler colonialism. A second theme I would like to place attention to is Palestine's lack of support from other Arab countries. In the second chapter, Dr. Khalidi states that although the Alexandria Protocol of October 1944, whereby Egypt, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and Transjordan originally agreed to create, the League has stressed the importance of the cause of the Arabs of Palestine, while regretting the woes that have been inflicted on the Jews of Europe. These states were barely independent of their former colonial masters. In other words, most Arab states that were transitioning from Britain's colonialism never fully dispelled the atrocities done by the Israel state. Instead, Arab states shared a level of sympathy for Israel. So even though all Arab states are independent from Britain, full support for the Palestinians was not given as a result of the political and economical interest of Arab countries. Specifically, Dr. Khalidi states that King Abd al-Aziz of Saudi Arabia, who had farsightedly signed a crucial agreement with American oil companies in 1933 to the detriment of British oil interests, met with an ailing Frank D. Roosevelt on board a U.S. warship in the spring of 1945, weeks before the American leader's death. He received reassured pledges directly from the president that the United States would do nothing to harm the Arabs of Palestine and would consult with the Arabs before taking any action there. These promises were casually disregarded by the Roosevelt successor, Harry Truman, but because of Saudi regime's economic and military dependency on the United States, the king refrained from protesting or exerting influence decisively in favor of Palestinians. This can be found on page 69. In addition to the theme of settler colonialism, and I appreciate how Dr. Khalidi subtly illustrates the interconnectedness of Israel's settler colonialism and the restrained support of the Arab community as contributing factors to the genocide of Palestinians. Lastly, I want to speak about the theme of resiliency. Throughout the book, Dr. Khalidi does an amazing job in illustrating the resiliency of the Palestinian people. Despite the horrendous series of events experienced by the Palestinians, Dr. Khalidi illustrates how the Palestinian people stand united to protect their statehood and sovereignty. Now, let's focus on Dr. Khalidi's writing style. So throughout the book, I found the writing style to be very academic. Specifically, I find there to be little to no emotion in the narration of the Six Wars. As a result, there were times I had to take a mental health break from reading because this book was making me feel very overstimulated. I don't think Dr. Khalidi discerned that the reader may get emotionally inundated from the horrific experiences of the Palestinian people. I believe that if he did, there would be some relief points that would allow the reader to reflect on what was read, in addition to processing the information in a way that does not feel overwhelming. Honestly, this book took me some time to read because Dr. Khalidi did not hold back on the history of the Palestinian and Israeli conflict. As such, the narration included horrific and complex information. As a result, like I said before, I needed a lot of mental health breaks to get me through this book. However, if you're not as sensitive as me and have the emotional bandwidth to not feel inundated by the horrific histories experienced by the Palestinian people, then I believe you will appreciate the writing style of Dr. Khalidi. Unfortunately for me, the writing style and themes of the book left me feeling extremely overwhelmed. However, this does not take away from the fact that Dr. Khalidi is extremely knowledgeable on this subject. So, despite how emotionally charged I felt while reading the book, I love this book for the sole purpose of how informative it is. As an expert of the Israeli and Palestinian conflict, Dr. Khalidi doesn't hold back in sharing his knowledge on the highly publicized and contentious war between Israel and Palestine. As such, this book felt like a personal investment from my own personal knowledge. In addition to this, it gives me the confidence to enter conversations regarding the Israeli and Palestinian conflict as a result of learning from Dr. Khalidi. For this reason, I highly recommend the book, The 100 Years' War on Palestine, A History of Settler Colonialism and Resistance from 1917 to 2017. Well, there we have it. I've completed my first book review for the year of 2026. Woo! I hope you enjoyed today's book review. And so now we're going to transition to the latest news in the world of publishing. So as we are now in the new year, there are so many book releases that I'm excited for. So the first book I'm excited to read is A Black Queer History of the United States by C. Riley Snorton and Darius Foe. The second book I'm excited to read is My America, Langston Hughes on Democracy by Randall Maurice Jelks. That one is a good one. So the third book I'm excited to read is Chains of Ideas, The Origins of Our Authoritarian Age by Abraham X. Kendi. The fourth book I'm excited to read is The Real Ones, How to Disrupt the Hidden Ways Racism Makes Us Less Authentic by Maya Rupert. We're going to circle back to that. So the fifth book I'm excited to read is Africulture. The sixth book I'm excited to read is Shards of Silence. That one I'm really excited for. And the final book of this year that I'm excited to read is Calling for a Blanket Dance. So are you excited for any of these releases, or are there other releases that I haven't mentioned that you're looking forward to? If that's the case, please share. Sharing is caring. I would like to know so that I can also check it out and maybe add it to my reading list. Okay, so I wanted us to circle back on the book, The Real Ones, How to Disrupt the Hidden Ways Racism Makes Us Less Authentic. So this book stood out to me for one particular reason, and that is I've never thought that racism would made me less authentic. So when I saw this book title, I'm like, okay, this is something that I would be interested in reading. So for you to understand what this book is all about, I'm going to read you the synopsis and then we'll continue the conversation. So the synopsis is top political strategist Maya Rupert reveals how for people of color, being real comes at a cost and authenticity is a privilege the marginalized cannot afford. That is, unless we change the system that keeps sending us the bill. So in this deeply relatable book, Rupert weaves together pop culture and politics, workplace advice, and personal stories. She shares the off-camera experiences on the presidential campaign trail in a post-Obama political landscape. She sees what Taylor Swift and Beyonce fans expect from our biggest stars. One is admired, the authentic girl next door. The other is required to be a queen. She exposes the trap too many face in the workplace when we're asked to bring our full selves to work, but not too much. And Rupert sees a world where success is at the expense of our authenticity, not because of it. So The Real Ones offers an entirely fresh take on race, that authenticity is a privilege kept from people of color when we are constantly confronted with the question, who do you think you are? We cannot begin to ask ourselves, who am I? Wow. So I just want to repeat that. Who do you think you are? So when we are constantly confronted with the question, who do you think you are? We cannot begin to ask ourselves, who am I? Wow. I just want to take a second to like process that. So it's funny because we live in a society where, and maybe this is it's very lazy on my part why I have this question, is this statement. It's not something that has ever crossed my mind. But now that I'm reflecting on it, I can see why this, this is a relevant topic, especially in today's world, where being authentically Black is looked down upon, but it's also something that is admired, something that is replicated, something that is, you know, taken for what it is. And not really taken for what it is, but something that is admired, but also frowned upon. For example, as Black women, if you don't look a certain way, and specifically light skinned, then I feel like society is more harsh and is not, society doesn't give as much opportunities in comparison to a Black woman who is of a lighter complexion. Now, people are becoming more educated and more aware, so things are slowly changing. However, these are still issues that a lot of dark skinned women have to face. And even when it comes to, an afro, I know in years ago, wearing an afro in the workplace was considered not to be professional because they considered the afro to have a messy appearance or unput together or unprofessional, so when we think about racism, I'm going to have to agree with her in the sense that with Maya Rupert, that yeah, racism does not allow us to be authentically who we are as people. And even when we look at pop culture and we see that most of the top selling artists, female artists within the Black community, are of lighter complexion, and it really asks, you really have to ask yourself, are dark skinned women not marketable like fair skinned women are? And these are conversations that are had. I can't, I'm not going to make a blanket statement and state that, people within the Black community don't have these conversations, because I'm sure they do. But ultimately, what it boils down to is fearlessly loving yourself. And it's funny that I'm speaking about this book title because the other day I was telling myself that I love everything about me, and I am unapologetically Black, right? I love my nose, I love my hair, I love my skin, I love everything about me. And that doesn't take away from my European counterparts. They are as beautiful as I am. But because they look different from me doesn't make me less of a person or less beautiful or less desirable. We all have to accept that we're all different, and our differences is what makes us unique, not makes us more unique than our counterparts. I'm happy that this conversation is being had. I'm happy that Maya Rupert had, the courage to make such a bold statement as the title of her book, The Real Ones: How to Disrupt the Hidden Ways Racism Makes Us Less Authentic. Like these are the books that I really hope that people in our community read, because these are the conversations that need to be had. Like if we're gonna protest against systemic racism, we gotta also protest how it tells us not to love ourselves. So I'm excited for The Real Ones: How to Disrupt the Hidden Ways Racism Makes Us Less Authentic. That's definitely on the reading list. I'm definitely going to do a review on it. And I honestly don't feel like I'm going to be disappointed. I don't think Maya is going to disappoint me. Honestly, I don't. Okay, so that's everything for today. Thank you so much for listening to my book review on The 100 Years War on Palestine by Rashid Khalidi. On Sunday, I have another amazing book that I'm going to review, and can't wait to speak to you then. So don't forget to share, comment, and like, and also don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Also, you can also find me on Spotify. So if you want to listen to me while you're working out or driving to work or school or home, you can check me out there and be sure to follow me. And yeah, I hope you like today's episode, and I'm so happy to have you a part of this community. Bye, my bookies.